Greetings, everyone. Thank you very much for taking time to join us today. My name is Pat Turney, and I am the Director of Partner Relations here at JMARK. This is another installment of our Business Builder webinar series. Now, these webinars are designed to help you as a business decision maker to gain more knowledge and insight into topics that can help your organization. Our desire is that the content is relevant and that it will help your company to thrive in today's marketplace. Today's webinar is entitled, Why Strategies Fail, 10 Common and Avoidable Pitfalls. The presentation should be about 50 minutes long. A copy of the recording will also be made available soon after the event. Also, as noted on this page, you can download a copy of this presentation at www.eosleader.com. I encourage you to stay for the entire event to get the full value. Plus, you will get some details about our upcoming webinars and also a technology summit that we have coming up in May. We recognize your time is precious, and we are honored to have you in our event today. Today, we are definitely excited to have Dan Sedor with Leadership Resources. Dan is an award-winning facilitator and certified EOS implementer that has worked with hundreds of firms over the last 25 years to help them drive greater results. We are honored to have Dan as our guest this month. I'd like to hand this over to you, Dan. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good day, everyone. As Paul J. Myers said, successful people make just as many mistakes as anyone else. They just happen to learn from each and every mistake. I appreciate the introduction, Pat, the opportunity to be here with you all today. As Pat's introduction inferred, I've had an opportunity to learn a lot over the years. And I'm here today to share not only from our failures and our challenges and the issues we've overcome, but also from those hundreds of organizations that we've been working with and learning through along the way. I hope some of the things you hear today will resonate with you, and you've experienced some of these things personally. And in some cases, if you haven't yet experienced them, that might be a good thing because you want to avoid some of these pitfalls. I'd like to direct your attention to the screen and looking at that image in the middle of the rock formation. And if you look closely at this image, notice the delicate balance that exists. With the slightest little imbalance, these rocks will all tumble to the ground. As with successful strategies, there is also a delicate balance, a fine line between success and failure. And my hope is for your company, your department, or yourself individually, that you can understand and gain some insights from these common and avoidable pitfalls to maintain the success that you wish. So today we're gonna explore why strategies fail. The title is 10 Common and Avoidable Pitfalls. And just so we're crystal clear, if you read the description, we're only gonna cover 4 of those 10 today because we wanna have time for you to hear them, process them, and I wanna leave some time as well for you to submit any types of questions you might have, as well as some comments related to what resonated with you today.
You know, Dan, I would also add into that is that just to remind our audience that if you are viewing us on Facebook Live, please add in your questions in the comment area, and we will look at those and definitely be getting back with you. And as well, people can contact you at the information that's here, and we'll again have that information at the end of the presentation.
Awesome. Thanks for the clarity, Pat. With that said, let's look. Hitting the button, Pat. It didn't go forward this time. Let's see. So Pat, appears I need your help. There we go. So let's start with number 1. One of the main things that I've observed over the years through ourselves and our clients, why certain strategies fail, is we set unrealistic strategies. And the most important piece of it, it creates no hope. People lose hope out of the gate that there's no reason this strategy is going to have any success. If we stop and think about this, if it's ever happened to you, there's one common thing that occurs, and that is inaction. After all, if there's no hope, what are we acting on or acting toward? Sometimes this unrealistic causes great amount of confusion. We don't understand which direction to go because it's so unclear and unrealistic from the get-go. I've worked with thousands of leaders, and as I've talked to them, they've just shared with me that, Dan, we don't have enough people with the positive attitudes that we need on a regular basis. And I want to tie in positive attitude into this piece of no hope and being unrealistic, because there is a connection. The best definition I've ever heard of people with positive attitudes, and I hope this resonates for some of you, is people that, first of all, forgive the past. They don't hold any grudges. They've let go of the past. They're also people that are grateful of the present. So they appreciate what's happening currently. And the third piece is, for a person with a positive attitude, is they're also hopeful for the future. I bring this quote up and I reinforce this positive attitude definition for all of us, because as leaders of others, as we're setting future strategies, we want to optimize and engage everyone at their deepest. And part of that is we've got to make sure that we've got some type of realistic, hopeful things that we're shooting for in the future. Otherwise, at best, we get a 2/3 of a positive attitude. And we need more than that from our people. We need people engaged, focused, and believing that what they're going after can happen. Another way to look at this is this tool called the success chain reinforces the whole notion that when we just boil down success into the basics, it comes from achieving certain types of results, certain types of outcomes, certain types of strategies. And the reason why we feel the success from those things is because we did something to affect it. Our actions, our behavior, something that we did had something to do with the outcome, and so we can feel good about the outcome. But when we stop and really boil it down, why do we act the way we do? Why do we behave the way we do? It's because of how we think. Our attitudes, our habits of thinking affect our everyday actions. And where did these attitudes and habits of thought come from? From our past conditioning experiences. And if we stop and think about it, every one of us listening to this information right now, we have our own success chain. We've had our own spaced repetition of habits of thought and patterns of behavior that have either worked for us or not worked for us, and we've adapted over time. All of that relates to an important point I want to also leave on this first area that people should avoid, and that is when we're being unrealistic about these strategies, one thing we have to realize is we may have to repeat these more than 1 or 2 or 3 times for people to hear them, take them, and actually assimilate them and go after these strategies. I think sometimes as human beings, we think one time is enough. And I just want to reinforce to every one of us, myself included, because this is a good reminder for me, that if we're going to go after some type of a strategy, even if it's a little bit of a stretch for people, we've got to keep beating the drum, repeating it, sharing it, because the more people hear it, the more they have a chance to internalize the thought and go, you know what, I can see how that might work. And the minute their attitudes shift into I think we can, it leads to some actions to support the outcome we want. So why strategies fail? One avoidable pitfall is this notion of being unrealistic and creating no hope. So please do everything in your power to make sure there is hope. And by the way, one small little subtle thing after sharing a strategy to find out if there is hope out there, ask people to ask you questions. Ask them if they believe it seems realistic or not. You might be surprised what you hear. A second common strategy, a second common reason why strategies fail is sometimes some of us leaders chase shiny objects. We don't stick to the path that we just got done talking about. I just want to reinforce to all the leaders listening today, it's not a bad thing to have ideas and look at new ways, but we've got to be strategic and deliberate about when we share these new ways. There's one common element here I want to share, and for those of you that are familiar with the EOS process, made popular by the book Traction, some of these words will make sense. For those that haven't, that's okay, because no matter what your company is doing, companies typically have people in the organization that are more visionary. They're seeing the future well in advance. They're the ones with the 20 ideas. And then they also have roles in the company called integrators, which are the voice of reasons. the ones that help buffer all the ideas the visionaries share into, you know what, 20 great ideas, here's one that will actually work, I'll see it through. And so whether you use these terms in your company or not, these relationships exist. Well, a key thing related to this key pitfall is we've got to spend time and help these visionaries to the best of our ability, because we don't want these people that are bringing ideas to stop bringing the ideas. We need visionaries. We need people to think and look to the future. So they need help too, and we've got to find ways to help them. One of the best ways is, as you work with your leadership teams, it's clear who the visionaries are typically, and those that are more integrator oriented. We've got to get permission to be honest with the visionaries. And whether you have a leadership team that's quite visionary or an individual that's a visionary, it doesn't really matter. We've got to have a way to balance them and have permission to challenge them if we think they're going a different direction than what we just heard a day, a week, or a month ago. Or, as this bullet says, or we perceive is different. I've seen countless times in my own personal experience where I hear something coming out of our visionary and I perceive it's a different direction than where we're heading. And because we've got an open and honest dialogue, I can say, hey, I'm not sure that's consistent with the plan. And he's like, yes, it is, and here's why. And he helps me understand that it actually does fit. So, A, if I wasn't able to voice it in the first place, we'd have an issue. B, his response to me and the education back helped me understand that, you know what, it really is integrated. It really does make sense. It's not a different path. And I bring this up because sometimes I think we get frustrated with the visionaries and we don't give them a chance. Because third, it is in our interest, and I've seen this countless times in our organization and in others, when we find ways to free up the visionaries to do their thing and let the integrators and let all the people running ops and sales and marketing and HR and IT and finance, let the people do their jobs and let the visionaries go off and vision, good things happen for everybody. So I just want to reinforce that we have to address these dynamics in our companies. Another thing, if you're open to being accountable to something that you're sharing with others, and you want to make sure that you're staying the course and not chasing shiny objects, then the best thing to do is to cascade your message. Share your message, share the plan downward through the organization. This too will help minimize the shiny object chasing that can happen in organizations. A couple key elements to consider. Number one, when you're sharing your plan with others, also demonstrate that how this plan we're going after is staying true to what you believe your organization is best at and what you're all about. Some people call these purpose statements, some call these value proposition statements, whatever the different statements you have and you can use, demonstrate that how your plan connects with these things. And don't be afraid to share with people clear targets, not just a year down the road, but 3 years and 5 or more years down the road. Because when people start seeing numbers and targets beyond the year, it paints a picture and sends a message that we're not just looking to grow 20% this year. We're looking to grow 66% over the next 3 years, or whatever those numbers might be. That sends a pretty clear message that we don't just stop at the 1 year mark. Another part of communication plans that have been cascaded and done well in organizations like ours and others is that to do this sharing of this plan at least 4 times per year, at least on a quarterly basis. I do have a few clients that have told me that, Dan, we've done that and that served the purpose, but we learned we needed more. And so I've heard from numerous clients when I shared this piece, they're like, you know what, just so you know, we do it monthly. It works for us. We need it. Our 166 employees need to hear this message more than 4 times a year. And so for those listening in, if you can pull it off monthly, please do. I would just offer up one small piece is follow the 5 B's, the be brief, be bright, be gone, and just make sure that you don't take too much time every month sharing it. It should be pretty brief and to the point, and that'll work just fine. Also, when sharing information on a quarterly basis, I've seen it work time and time again. We often get stuck on the current quarter status, which is a good thing to share, but we should also share what happened in the previous quarter as a way of reminding us of, hey, just remember a quarter ago, we had this going on, could be good, bad, or a little bit of both. And here's where we're at currently. And oh, by the way, here's where we're going in the quarter ahead. So in simple terms, it's a past, present, and future mode. And it's just a nice way to create some clean, clear communication so people have a context for, wow, look at what we've done this quarter and how it compares to the last quarter and how it's going to compare to the quarter ahead. It just helps people get an idea where we're going.
You know, Dan, whenever you mention that, and I have found that when leaders share this kind of information with their team, it really helps empower them and gives them an understanding of the organization, how it's been going, where it's moving forward, where are the areas that they could help in, and they have some buy-in. You know, I think in the past, a lot of times leaders would withhold this and say, well, it's only for the executives to know this information. And I think that's a mistake. And that's what you're pointing out, that it's like you need to bring in the KPIs so people are aware of that and can make adjustments to hopefully improve not only the business overall, but, their individual departments. So.
You bet. If you could see me, I'd be smiling and nodding my head up and down the whole time, Pat. And to your point, though, there's two things I want to spin off of there. One, if you think back to prior to the year 2000 when the bubble burst and a lot of things have changed, you go back into the 80s and 90s and look back at companies back then, they had a lot more, I'll call it redundant resources available. They had a lot more people doing more following orders. And if you think about this day and age, there's very few places I see anymore that has redundant resources. Or if they do, it's a very small amount of overlap. And I bring that up because in today's age, we've got to engage the entire organization on where we're at and where we're going. Because Pat, to your point, if we expect them to be making good decisions for the greater good of the company, they need to know not only where we're at, but where we're going. Otherwise, unbeknownst to them, they're going to make decisions that actually limit our ability to grow 3 years down the road. So thank you for interjecting that perspective.
Yeah, the other thing too I've seen that helps is just a small baby step, if you will, was to put on checks what the cost of the insurance is. How much is the employer actually paying towards the insurance? Because a lot of times people just look at their check and say, well, I've got to pay X amount of dollars for my insurance, and they just don't think that, well, your employer is actually paying another portion of that for you, so that demonstrates the value, and people say, oh, okay, well, no wonder we need to succeed because there's additional costs that are incurred. So, yeah.
We don't know what we don't know. Ignorance is bliss. And sometimes when we're made aware of those things, it doesn't feel as good, but at least we're in the know. There's another quote that comes to mind as you share that, Pat, is in the absence of all known information, people will make things up. And I share that quote because what I don't know, I'm going to fill in the gaps and I'm going to do it. And ironically, I share this same perspective when I'm coaching youth sports. I'm like, hey, coaches, as I coach coaches, tell the parents your plan for the year, because if you don't tell them your plan, they're trying to figure out your plan. And when they don't see how it works, they're making up their own plan, and all of a sudden they're planning against you. So it happens in all walks of life.
Exactly.
So back to this thing called the success chain. And again, as Pat and I just interacted back and forth, some of these past experiences that we've all had and seen tells us that, these are some good things to be thinking about and frankly acting upon. And again, we just can't underestimate the power of spaced repetition when it comes to shiny objects and staying the course and staying the path. The beautiful part about sharing things on a monthly basis and or a quarterly basis, each time you share, that spaced repetition is reinforcing people's thoughts and actions. And if in worst case scenario, 6 months into the year, they hear you say something as a leader and they realize, oh darn, I've been doing something in the wrong direction or making bad decisions. Well, thank God they figured it out now and not continue doing it for the next 2 years. So again, Don't assume people understand the bigger picture. We owe it to them as leaders of the company to share and get clarity on where we're going and why we're going there. So at this point, we've just touched on two of some avoidable pitfalls, why strategies fail: unrealistic, creating no hope; shiny objects, leaders not staying the path. I'm just going to pause for a second, and Pat or anyone else, if there's a way to interact today, if there's a question someone wants fielded, or Pat, if you've heard something else you think we should build upon, let me just pause before we go on to the third item.
Sure thing, Dan. Yes, I would remind everybody that, again, on Facebook, please put your comments, your questions in the comment field so we can take a look at those and answer those for you. I'm looking at our chat window. Don't see that we have any questions at this time, but I believe we really are building on some key principles for us as leaders to help our organization to thrive, which is our theme. So I'm going to just go ahead and hand it back over to you, Dan, and you can continue on, I believe.
Awesome. Thank you, Pat. And again, Pat, interject like you have been throughout this. It helps add some interaction here. Here's a third reason, an avoidable pitfall that we should be watching for. A reason why strategies fail is we have some lack of accountability, lack of support for execution. I'm going to dig in that a little bit deeper here. So over the years, folks, as we've worked with clientele, we've run into tons of scenarios where when we're working with a client, executive coaching, they're doing great, and then they end the services with us, and they're like, damn it, we just fell off the bike, we fell off the wagon. And so we've learned, and let's face it, guys, there's 1,001 apps out there, but we've created our own. I want to reference our app today, but just know that what I'm sharing exists in some other apps out there in different forms and fashions. But I want to reference what we've done for our clients to help them stay the course. Number one, folks, if you want to stay focused on execution and accountability, we've got to get crystal clear on what we're trying to define. And you'll see on the left-hand side here, and I know the screen's small on the left, it's more of a screenshot, but the bullets are the key, is that the better we get at setting some specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and tangible goals, it helps us better define what these priorities are for the quarter. Some people call them rocks. That's what term we use for them. And then the next thing is, it's one thing to set goals for the quarter and that we're working on, but how do we make sure that they're in alignment with this 1, 3, 5, 10-year plan that might be out there? And so the tool that we've created called Accelerate helps people ensure that what they're setting aligns with the goals of the organization. And while you can't see it on the left-hand side, there's this kind of small print. At the very bottom, we even ask the question, hey, when you achieve what you're going after, what's the value of it to the organization? How often do we stop and think about what we're doing and what the actual value is? So we do a lot of these questions up front to get people to think about, am I going after the right thing? And then the number one excuse we have for anybody in our society this year, in this world, is it's got to be convenient. If it's not convenient, I'm not going to do it. And so, again, we set up Accelerate, and there's a lot of apps out there, like I mentioned, so that from your cell phone, anywhere in the world, any time of the day, you have access to updating and looking at your goals. So there's no excuse to not have them top of mind. As an example, every day, through my phone, if I'm out and about, I'll get a prompt through an email around noon to enter a couple data points to support did I do or did I not do certain things today related to my goal to move forward. And so again, we allow an easy, distraction-free mobile technology, just like there's many apps out there. But find something that works, guys, and use it. But using it isn't just it. So we also want to make sure that the leadership team, the executive team, or a department head has access to see how their entire team is doing on all the different goals they're working on. So we've created through our process a quick 24/7 access to evaluate how are we doing on the behaviors that we're supposed to be changing and the results we're going after, so that at any moment in time, as you can see here on the screen on the left, you can see that one of the goals is at 92% done, one's at 83, one's at 50, and it's red, so it's behind schedule. So it just allows a quick glance at how are we doing. And then just as importantly as that, it allows us to then dig into the behaviors, the attitudes, the various components that we allow our clients to customize in support of their goals. And it helps the coaches, it helps the leaders coach people and help hold accountable. And ironically, just recently, my business partner did this with me. And he's like, Dan, I see you're off track in one of your goals. I was looking through the goal. Here's something you're working on. I'm curious. Why is that behind? Help me understand what's going on. You need my help. And we had a very wide open conversation. And it just allowed us to really get to the root of it. And the bottom line was, folks, I took my eye off the ball. The honest to goodness response after we talked and I looked at my own data, it's like, I let up on the pedal. I let up on the gas pedal. I've got to get back to focusing on that. And so again, ultimately, a tool like this, or any tool for that matter, should help you coach and follow up and help people real time with what's going on versus waiting a month and realizing that 3 weeks later we should have been talking. So I bring up Accelerate as a tool. There's many other tools out there, guys. I just want to point to one that we have control over, we can show you. But again, find a tool that helps with execution support, that helps support accountability, because when there's a lack of it, strategies fail. One of my favorite ones to share, and again, keep in mind, today we're going to stop after this fourth one. We'll take some Q&A as well and maybe hit another one or two, but we'll see. But this one is an attention getter for me, because if we're really honest with each other and honest with ourselves, we as people resist change, but there's always a few nuances to that. But think about some of the best ideas you've ever heard that never happened. It's likely because there was some level of resistance to that idea, to that strategy, to that change in the first place. So we owe it to ourselves to think about some of these pitfalls to avoid, because inevitably, folks, in your organization, you won't exist if you're not making changes. And if you stop and think about it, there's a quote that I tend to borrow from a few other folks. Paul J. Meyer, again, is one of those authors that and influencers of ours over the years, is you're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotting. There's nothing in between. And the intent of that message is, if we get stuck on the status quo and happy with the way it was for the last year, while we're doing that, our competition is making changes to compete with us, and pretty soon we will be ripe and rotting because they're going to surpass us. We've got to maintain our competitive edges, folks. I think deep down we know this. It doesn't mean we always like it, because it means we've got to keep making changes for the better. One of my favorite tools to share with this is called the Change Ladder. And I just want you to think about this as I'm sharing the ladder, and think of a change you're going through right now. I'd be hard pressed to say that I can think of at least 5 changes we're doing in our company as we speak. I'm sure there's a few I don't know about. But think of a change that is going on in your company today. And then answer the question, how are you handling this change? Which rung of the ladder are you on? Are you a person that's making it happen? Are you a person that's helping it happen? And those are two different things. Helping it usually means you're supporting it, you're chipping in a little bit here and there, versus making it happen, you're driving it, you're working on it, you're helping lead it. You know, those are subtle differences. But I think you would agree, don't we want our people, everyone in the company, to be either helping make it happen or just supporting it happening, helping it along the way? Those are the top 2 rungs. This is more what we call, this is the victor mentality. You want everyone in your organization having one of these 2 angles to consider with any change. But unfortunately, that's not always reality. Some people just let it happen. They're sitting back watching and potentially even secretly hoping it doesn't work, but they're just sitting back and they're not doing anything to support it. Worst case scenario, you've got some people working against it. Now, this is where some of that passive aggressive things will come in. People may not overtly be saying, I disagree with this, but behind the scenes, if they're pushing against it and challenging people that are doing it, if they're challenging the people that are helping it happen and going, you know what, are you sure that's going to work? I don't think it is. In their own way, they're working against that change. And it's not always on the surface. But if we're honest with ourselves, folks, if we just stop and think about any change that you've experienced in life, and I'm going to venture to say we've experienced thousands of changes in our lifetime, there's occasions where we do work against things, if we're honest with ourselves. There's times where we're just letting them happen and kind of secretly hoping they don't work. There's also times we're helping it happen. We're more actively involved with it. And there's times that we're driving the change and making it happen. And I bring this up because the top two pieces here, the top two rungs, are much more about being engaged, involved, included. And sometimes when we exclude people, they'll slide down into let it happen and work against it. So I bring this up because sometimes as leaders, we might catch someone working against it, but we've got to ask ourselves the question, what have we done to support that? Have we truly invited them to be involved? Have we truly engaged them and included them in this? Because sometimes that issue is in our realm, even though the symptom is someone's working against it. There is a fifth rung, though, and it happens on occasion, is the how you handling changes, what happened? This is the pure ignorance is bliss stage, where people don't have a clue what's going on. I'm not saying it's always a bad thing, as long as whatever they do day to day doesn't affect the change, or we need them to come along with the change. The reality is, in larger organizations, there's different departments, different divisions, and you're not going to know what happens in every division. But by golly, if there's a change in one division that happens to cross over and affect yours, one of your procedures or policies or processes, by golly, you don't want to be caught blind. So this change ladder is helpful, folks. I encourage people, when you're going through change, to put this out in front of your organization as 5 bullets, and share with them that you realize as a leader of the company that these are 5 possible rungs that any of you might be in the audience. And at that point, acknowledge, we can't have you working against it. We don't want you just letting it happen. We want and need your help in making it happen. And I just say, just use this as a way to acknowledge reality and then invite people, include people to be a part of it.
Dan, I was also thinking this, as leaders, we need to learn how to let it happen and help it happen, and not always think that we have to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing for us as leaders, because there's that mentality that, well, if you want it done right, you just got to do it yourself. It's like, no, that's not how you grow. You need to be able to delegate, and you need to trust your people. And hopefully, when they make it happen, they could do it better than how you would have done it.
That's
And
a great
us
point.
as leaders, we have got to release and let our people move forward, and hopefully take it to levels that we had no idea that we can do as an organization.
That's a fine point, Pat. In fact, but I would add in here and say that by me, let's say I've got a team and I'm getting others involved to take it over and make it happen. By default, I'm actually helping it happen by doing that. The letting it happen is more of a passive aggressive stance, where I'm not really doing anything to support it at all. Versus helping it, in this case, to your point, helping something happen could be to engage the right people, let them step in, let them take it over, let them create the plan, let them drive it, and you're just there to help it, meaning you're there to support them, encourage them. On occasion, if you see things are going well, you're acknowledging what went well. If you see they're struggling, you say, hey, it appears you're getting stuck, can I help? And so I don't disagree with what you're describing here. I would still call that help it happen stage.
Exactly.
Cool. Any other comments on that, Pat, before we shift on this?
Well, I'll give you a practical example too, just outside of business, is that with the Boy Scout troop that my son is a part of, the scouts have to plan for the campouts. They have to plan for their meals. They need to plan for who's going to be in charge of setting up the tents and tearing them down, and all the different work division. But us as adults, we're just there for safety and to make sure there's not anything that's being done that is not really practical. But for the most part, they have to learn and how to make it happen, and we're just there to help.
Yeah.
And it's tough at times, because we're like, well, I wouldn't do it like that if I was you, but okay, go ahead. And it's just a learning process. And I think that extends into business, to where us as leaders, we need to enable and help it happen, and so it can happen.
Well, and something you brought up, Pat, is if we're honest with ourselves as well, we've all learned our way to where we're at today.
Yeah.
We've made mistakes in the past, and to your point, in this Boy Scout scenario, them learning and making decisions and realizing that wasn't a good decision and then learning what was, that was a key learning moment for them. That's a life learning. We've all had those in our lifetime, not just in Boy Scouts, but in business. And part of your point earlier is by allowing others to step up and make things happen. I had a client recently that engaged in a CRM related project, and they intentionally involved different people from various layers of the organization in the project team. So it wasn't driven from the top, it wasn't driven from the bottom, it was driven from every layer in the organization. And the neat thing about it is, even that person that was at a level where maybe they were, at an entry-level role or an intern role, at least they understand what little pieces that they had to do related to the system. And it wasn't a lot, but as with any system, bad data in means bad data being used. And so everybody was clear on their part and what data they needed to enter. And even just the entry of a new company's name with the right spelling and the right email and the right data like that, which sounds like pretty basic stuff. But if it's entered wrong and all of a sudden you're calling your customer the wrong name or sending an email with the wrong company name, that makes you look bad as a company. So it just reinforced to the whole organization that no matter what our role is in entering data in that CRM system, know that it affects everyone all along the chain.
Great.
Now, let's build upon this change ladder. Change ladder is almost more of a, what's my involvement level? This next diagram has another way of painting a picture of what happens during change. In the perfect world, if you look on the left-hand side of this diagram called the J-curve, performance is on the left-hand scale there. So you want to improve performance. I'd like to say that I've yet to meet a leader that said we want to make our performance worse. We're always looking to get better and move up. And so the old status quo on the left, on the right-hand side, the new status quo on the right. I mean, the intent, guys, for any change we make, we believe it's going to be better. There's higher level of performance. But the reality is this. We don't just go from the old status quo straight up to the new status quo. There's usually a drop, a dip, and then some factors that slow it down from getting there. There's a reason why things don't exist today. There's a reason why goals are set. Goals are set to fill gaps and voids of problems, of issues, of opportunities. And if we're honest with ourselves, and I can't think of one right now, but maybe I'm missing it, I have yet to see anything I've implemented go straight up. It always drops off. There's always a little bit of the foreign element just means the change is starting to really happen. And it's very natural for us to have a level of resistance initially to anything. Resistance comes in a lot of forms. Resistance is, you know what, I'm not sure I like where this is going. Resistance is, what I'm seeing here, I see all this negative. I don't see the upside. There's all kinds of things that cause resistance. But if we're honest with ourselves, on occasion, we try and crawl back up to where the old status quo was. And the reality is when the change is going to happen that we can't stop, at some point we enter into a chaos stage. There's even more confusion, there's more concern, there's chaos where it's just, it doesn't look good, it doesn't feel good. I don't know about you, no one really likes to be in that mode of chaos. But there's a juncture, and at some point the reality kicks in, and whether we fall forward to the right on this toward the transforming idea, but at some point we finally get it. We finally see the potential. We finally understand that, oh, that's why we're doing it. Okay, I kind of got it now. Now, it doesn't mean we're doing anything, but mentally, the idea has hit us, and you see the guy that's standing up upright, kind of running forward, but there's still obstacles to overclimb. We have to still get over the stump in the road here. We still got to climb up to get back above where we were before, and that's why we've got to get people's energy on integration mode of actually acting upon the change. Back to the point on the previous slide, at some point, people have to know how they're going to either make it happen or help it happen, and that's the integration piece coming into life. And eventually, over time, which is from left to right, it represents time, over time, we do climb out of the hole, and we are at a better place. And when we look back to where we were, we agree, you know what, this is better. But by golly, it's hard to say or think that when you're in the hole. Now, there's two things I want to reference here on this J curve. And this is where, as leaders, we've got to be extremely diligent. A, we have to acknowledge that this J curve is going to happen. There's going to be a dip in performance. People are going to get distracted, interrupted. They're going to be confused. There is going to be a loss with any change that happens. The thing we need to do, though, is how do we minimize how deep they go? How do we minimize the depth at which we drop into the hole? And how do we minimize the duration that we're in the hole? And to me, that's all about what we do prior to the change is critical to when the change is coming. And then we have to also be prepared for after the change, for how do we keep going with this new status quo. I believe as leaders, we often don't think through enough of what the reality is that's coming, and we just mentally go from old status quo to new status quo and just almost turn off our blinders and go, you know what, everything's going to be fine. The reality is it will not be for a period of time. So as I say this, I encourage us to think about what can we do to help minimize the depth we drop and the length of the duration of being in this hole. Pat, I'm curious, as you've heard some of this perspective, I can only imagine you've been through a few changes in your lifetime at your company. Any changes come to mind where you've experienced this J curve?
When we've implemented a new, let's say, software for managing time, or just in maybe not the software as a whole, but we've made some adjustments on how we're going to enter in time or in our invoicing or something in the line of business area. There's always resistance, and I would say on the personal side, I mean, all of us really hate road construction. We have a lot of it in our area, but we enjoy the benefits at the end. But we sure do resist it and say, "Oh, why are they having to do this? It's going to make me late and so forth." But we have to power through it and understand that there's benefits at the end.
Yeah, I love the fact you bring in some of the kind of the real life scenarios like the road construction or anything else. What I'm sharing here in this J curve is reality, and it's personal reality, it's professional reality, it's business reality. I think that the key on this is we just have to be aware of it, and if we're honest with ourselves as a leader, even when we're the leader making the change happen, we go through these same stages early on, wrestling with, are we sure we want to build that new road? Are we sure we want to put in that new system? Are we sure we want to try new software? Are we sure? I mean, we're doing the resistance and the chaos, and we're processing all this. So the reality is, as leaders that are leading and driving the change, we live this J curve. And I think, Pat, to a point you brought up, I think sometimes because we lived it, we don't want others to have to live it. So we almost blindly assume people will just go from the old to the new without dropping in the hole. And the reality is people still are people. We still have emotions. We need to allow people to experience, they're going to drop in this hole. We've just got to find the ways to mitigate it and minimize it to the best of our ability.
I think if we talk just IT for a moment, all of us use Microsoft Windows XP, and it was around for a long time. In fact, the Microsoft admitted that they had it too long in the market, and people got so used to it that when they needed to make transformational changes to the operating system, there was a lot of resistance to it. Yeah. And in fact, the next version after XP was Windows Vista, and it was hated. So Vista was regarded as a transitional operating system because it made such sweeping changes to where the next iteration, Windows 7, was regarded as, oh, well, yeah, this is good. This is good. It was like, well, you know, Windows Vista, for the most part, was the same thing, but there was some significant changes, and it's more stable. But it was just that people were so used, and they went into the resistance and chaos, and it wasn't until Windows 7 came to where it was, oh, well, this is transforming. I like this.
Yeah. It's amazing. And that's why, you know, in your world, and I've worked with other technology-related companies, in your world, technology is changing. There's like a half-life for everything these days. It's lucky to last 6 to 12 months anymore without some major upgrades. In your world,
Yeah.
technology, that's the reality. Other industries aren't quite that dynamic, but change is still happening. But yeah,
Oh,
as I've
yeah.
worked with folks like you guys in the past, it's like the level of change you're experiencing in your company, that alone takes a lot of learning.
We like to say that the only thing constant is change,
Mm-hmm.
and laugh about it.
Mm-hmm. That's all we can do, folks. And I'll be the first to admit, so speaking of technology and just a small example, just yesterday at our office, our copier wasn't working. Well, these days the copiers are all interconnected and wireless, and when it goes down, and you have no way to print. It makes you appreciate and realize and understand how much you rely on things like that to work every day. And boy, when it's down for 2 hours, you feel it, and that's just a copier in our case. So I can only imagine what you guys experience at JMARK.
Yep.
So once again, folks, I would encourage this simple little picture called the J curve. And that's what I said, we're for the next 3 days, you can download this PowerPoint and have it and reference these slides. I just encourage people. I found that when people share this J curve picture with people, it takes away that person's feeling like they're left out and being mishandled, mistreated, because it's your way of telling them, hey, I expect that you're going to go through these phases. By the way, I need you to get integration and get to the new status quo as soon as possible. But I also realize you're going to have concerns, so please ask. You're going to have confusion, so please acknowledge it. And let us know when the aha hits you and you finally see it. But just let's be real about it. And it just takes away some of the edge of people feeling like they're being pushed and changed for change's sake. When the reality is you either get with the change or you die with the change. And let's face it, we want people to get with the change and help make it happen. Hence, back to this simple little picture called the success chain. You guys, I can't help but not bring this in every time I tie things back, because this chain represents who we are. Pat, you and I, as we're interacting today, you bring your own conditioning experiences over your past, as I do as well. Those experiences have affected how you and I think about things and how we act toward things and how we achieve what we do and how we feel about the success. And yet, I still want to reinforce to our listening audience, to Pat and myself, if we're honest, we're still learning every day, because there's constant spaced repetition of when we do things or think things that work, we're getting reinforcement to keep doing them. When they don't work, we change the path. And so this whole notion of change affects this success chain as well. We've just got to be real that the simple little diagram helps explain when people don't act the way we want them to. You go down the chain and you pause and just assess, why not? What's going on? And that's when we uncover some of the thoughts that are impeding their ability. So today, for what we've covered, taking away the, avoiding pitfalls that why strategies fail, strategic success comes through this simple little tool called the success chain, and just awareness of it. Cascading communication helps address some of the success as well. A tool like Accelerate that reinforces accountability is critical. Working with your visionary and integrators and keeping each other clear on staying the path and avoiding shiny objects. This J curve and this change ladder are just two small little tools that are perspective that help with success. And back to that initial definition of positive attitude, I encourage you to share that with your people, and encourage them to share with you when they don't feel like they have hope, or they can't be grateful, or they can't forgive the past. Because if we can help people through that, we've got great team members to support the success of our strategies. So why strategies fail? Unrealistic, shiny object, lack of execution or accountability, people resist change. These are 4 of 10. There's 6 more that are just as powerful. But with the time we've got, that was the intent today, is just to share some of these and get you thinking. So at this point, Pat, I'm going to conclude the conversation and open it up to any comments or questions that you or others might have.
Great. That's awesome, Dan. Thank you so much for sharing with us this valuable information. We definitely appreciate the time you invested in us. Don't have any questions in the chat window, but I would also encourage those of you that are watching on Facebook Live to, if you put in some comments and questions, we will be getting back with you. And just remind everybody, please contact Dan. If you have more questions, you can email him. There's his contact information up here on the screen. And a reminder, you can get a copy of this presentation by visiting the website that's on there, www.eosleader.com. And if you'd like to watch this again, you can watch it over and over on Facebook, on a JMARK Facebook website, or actually Facebook website, and our JMARK site. We definitely appreciate everybody taking some time. I do want to share just a few things too about us, JMARK, and I think that it's important for you to be aware of, and we're excited about it, that we are celebrating 30 years in business. JMARK has over 600 clients nationwide. We are in the top 100 globally of managed services providing, and we've been listed in the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies since 2010. We do have dedicated teams in banking, healthcare, professional services, hospitality, and public sector. So we have definitely seen a lot of change, for sure, Dan. That's something that we have to deal with all the time. And let us manage that change in IT for your organization. That's what we excel in. We are always looking to how we can make sure that the changes that happen in technology don't negatively impact your business, but that it can be a positive outcome for you and your company. You know, our motto is people first, technology second. What that means is that we're really all about the relationship we have with our clients. We don't see clients as consumers. We see them as partners, as partners in business, that we help one another to succeed. Because I remember hearing that the great Zig Ziglar, late Zig Ziglar, say that if you help enough people get what they want, then you will get what you want. It's important to know that we're all in it together, and we are here to help support you with your technology needs. With that, I do want to encourage everybody to take a look at this technology summit we have coming up. We're calling it the JMARK Business Innovation Technology Summit, and we are excited about this event. It's going to be in Springfield, Missouri, May 18th, and there's going to be over 25 breakout sessions that are in areas of compliance, operations, strategy, security, leadership. We have great keynote speakers. We've got one speaker that is a futurist, and that will help you think about the things that are coming up in the future. Again, more change, but JMARK helping you to manage that change. Visit our website at bizinnovationtechsummit.com. That's a website dedicated to this event, and you can register for this. Now, if you register by the end of March, we have early bird pricing, and it's $49. So check out this website. There's a lot more information out there about the sessions, the agenda, and we'll definitely have a great time and look forward to seeing you at this event. We've got many sponsors that will be at this, technology as well as non-technology sponsors. So this will be a great event for you to join us at. Next week, we are having another webinar, and it's going to be on the topic of Microsoft Excel. And we're calling it Excel Like a Pro Training, Learning the Basics about Excel 2016. There's a lot to know in Excel, so we're going to try to get the basics that are out there, and there might be just some things that you can glean from that, maybe yourself or some people in your organization. So please come join us. It's the next week on March 28th at 11 a.m. You can visit the jmark.com/events website, and we will have this on Facebook, and you can watch it. We had an event on Microsoft products not too long ago and broadcasted on Facebook, and had hundreds and hundreds of people watching this event and taking part. So please just take a moment and enjoy this, and you can get some information to be more successful. Again, Dan, I do want to thank you again for being our guest presenter on the Business Builder Series today. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
And thanks to everybody. We do thank you for taking time out to be with us. If you have any more questions, please either contact Dan, or you can also reach out to JMARK at jmark.com, or contact your account manager for more information. We'll have posted this recording. You can watch it on Facebook, and we look forward to seeing you at our future events and the conference in May. So please go visit that website, and thank you, and have a great rest of your day.